Hello, bruvs. We're back with Harvest Home by Thomas Tryon, a 1973 horror movie. Yeah, I think it was a miniseries too. Actually, I started watching it. Um, we're just about done with this book. We got about 24 pages, and I'll probably just go straight through 30 since why not get it over with? Or I'll wait and leave a huge cliffhanger because I know there's just the fucking droves of people here. 29. Hunched on my perch in the belfry, I watched the moon rise. The moon of no repentance. 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 Over black treetops. Baba, what do you got, buddy? Over black treetops whose branches seemed to reach upward for it, it rose, imponderable, imponderable. Isn't it supposed to be imponderable? Imponderable and potent, hanging low on the horizon like some titanic disk, vast and orange and glowing. And on this night of harvest home, it seemed its path was not around the globe in its accustomed orbit, but a trajectory propelling it cataclysmically at the earth. So huge and bright did it seem. Generously, it lent its light to this most ceremonious of occasions, as the women of Cornwall Coombe gathered below on the common. They seemed to meet in a community of spirit and endeavor, but with little of festival or celebration in their demeanor, a solemn convocation, rather, their apparel suitable to the event, full skirted, with drooping hems and long sleeves. A druidic look, the moonlight causing the white folds to shimmer and gleam. One pointed, then another, and I turned my head to look up Main Street, where, under a porch light beside the rusty glider, the child Missy Penrose appeared and came down the steps. The light went out, and now, out of the darkness, came another figure, their last appearing sister, she whom they awaited, the corn maiden herself. Veiled and ceremonially dressed, she came eagerly along the walk, her head proud and erect, surrogate for the dead Sophie Hook. Tonight, Justin would make the corn with Tamar Penrose, Sally Pounder, and Margie Birkin had lost. Imagine you're dating a girl named Sally Pounder. They brought her onto the common, where a festooned cart awaited her. Her face was discreetly hidden by the embroidered covering. She mounted into the cart, and I saw the widow's white cap moving through the white-clad figures as she draped the great quilt that told the story of the growing of the corn. Across the front of the cart, they held themselves in readiness, but they did not start out, for still there was one missing, Justin Hook, Tamar's partner in the night's events. Below me I could hear the internal workings of the clock, its iron gears ratcheting and settling into place again. The metallic clicks as the hands moved. I looked up at the bronze hull of the bell and the great iron clappers suspended above me, then down at the rope that trailed from the rocker to the vestibule below. I saw Justin before the women did. I did not know where he came from, but he was there at the end of Main Street, his blond head shining in the moonglow, his body shrouded in the same red mantle he had worn in the corn play. He was standing there, then he came on, walking slowly, operatically even. The women saw him, and they fell silent at his advance, a dark, majestic figure, looking neither right nor left, but coming straight toward them, his red mixing and mingling with their white, as they offered token aid for his ascent into the cart, where he stood beside the corn maiden. I'm gonna say you're fucking dead to me, buddy. Don't ever come here with that bullshit again. Thank you. Now where was I? He was standing there, then he came, blah, blah, blah. The women saw him and they fell silent at his advance, a dark, majestic figure looking neither right nor left, but coming straight toward them, his red mixing and mingling with their white as they offered token aid for his ascent into the cart, where he stood beside the corn maiden. They were a pair, Even with Sophie dead, and with whatever the night might hold, they were a pair, Justin and Tamar. I watched them as they linked hands, standing proud and erect, when the wooden tongue of the cart was raised. The vehicle, with its two passengers drawn in a wide arc, torches, 2, 4, 6, or more, flanking the sides of the cart, one figure running ahead to light the way, while musicians joined the moving troupe, flute and tambourine and drum, and the flower-braided cart was pulled not by any beast, but by the women themselves, along the roadway where dogs hugged the shoulders, trailing in inquisitive pairs, but silent, as if they too comprehended the meaning of harvest home. In Cornwall Coombe, I watched it out of sight, then began drawing up the bell rope, arm over arm, pulling it up to me. When it lay coiled at my feet, I took off my coat and wrapped it around the bell clapper, tying the sleeves to secure it. Yeah, you're right, Bubba. It's Harvest Home. It's a 1973 horror novel, and it's coming to a conclusion. I watched it out of sight, then began drawing up the bell rope, arm over arm, pulling it up to me. When it lay coiled at my feet, I took off my coat and wrapped it around the bell clapper, tying the sleeves to secure it. Then I dropped the rope outside the arch, put my weight on it so the bell tilted, and stepped out, clutching the rope and sliding down. The bell gave off one dull reverberation, which muted itself and floated away into silence as I let go of the rope and dropped to the ground. Against the perfect circle of the moon, paler than an hour ago, I watched the crow wing to its perch on the far side of the clearing. Somewhere in the cavernous fastnesses. That's odd. Fastnesses? In the cavernous fastnesses of Soaks's Lonesome, the fox barked, the fox I had heard on my first visit. He who watched the watchers, who hunted the hunters. The hollow curve felt uncomfortable against my back and sides as I huddled under the network of vines that sutured the gaping cavity of the blasted tree. Girdled there, a thick leafy screen securely hiding my head, where once the screaming skull, the skull of Grace Everdeen, had rested. I waited, watched, listened. At my feet, the dead roots convulsed themselves outward from the base of the tree to the spring, which bubbled and fretted its way along the rocky stream bed. The thick grass of the clearing was a silvery olive color in the moonlight. More silvery were the trunks of the birch grove, ringing the open space, and beyond that the trees were dark, receding in black corridors into the woods. Then, from afar, I heard the sound of voices being funneled toward me through the gap. Soon there were other voices, I had no idea whose, speaking in low tones. Above the flow of water I could hear them approaching behind the tree, then pass in a group, and I could see the backs of 4 women carrying between them an object which proved to be a large chair. Not an ordinary one, but a sort of throne woven with straw and corn, which they placed toward the edge of the clearing directly opposite my hiding place. Then, like me, they waited. Beyond the gap, the singing grew louder. It had taken them half an hour longer than it took me to get to the grove. I had followed the shorter route across the fields, avoiding the men posted along the old sallow road, and entering the woods through the meadow. They were coming through the gap now, processionally, not professionally. Their way lighted by the torches, I listened for the sound of the cart, but the corn maiden appeared on foot and was at once encircled and greeted by those who had come first, several clasping her to their bosom, then leading her to one side of the clearing where a large piece of cloth was spread. She sat veiled, the white mantle she wore drawn around so no bodily part showed. 8 or 10 of the girls grouped themselves about her. I had not yet seen the arrival of the 2 other important characters in the drama. The Widow Fortune and the Harvest Lord himself, The women had arrayed themselves in a large circular group about the clearing, waiting. I saw some of them whisper to each other, then look in my direction, and they joined hands and came toward the tree. I felt the fear of discovery. Suddenly, Robert's warning came back to me. The Eleusinian mysteries that no man had seen and lived to tell of. They came close, their faces turned directly toward me, but they had not discovered my hiding place. Meanwhile, other women were arriving in the clearing, many carrying hoes, some bringing wooden kegs. The ones I had seen unloaded from Fred Minerva's wagon. Several large baskets were brought out, from which came chalice like cups. These were filled from the kegs and passed around, the recipients tasting, as though examining for flavor, then drinking. Cups were carried to the Corn Maidens group sitting on the ground, and they, too, drank. Presently, I heard the sound of the instruments, and the celebrants arranged themselves again in a large circle around the clearing, cups poised in midair. I could hear someone moving behind me, and in a few moments I saw the widow's broad black back and her white cap as she walked into the clearing, leading Justin Hook, whose eyes were blindfolded by a white band tied behind. The widow brought him to the throne, where she aided him in sitting, arranging his red mantle so it covered him to the ground. A cup was quickly brought and offered to her. She signaled impatiently, and it was placed in Justin's hands, while another cup was given to the widow, and they both drank. The cups were passed and passed again. The women drank long and eagerly, as if anxious to absorb the contents. They had broken up into groups which, in the most casual fashion, began a loose form of dance, not the dance they had executed at the husking bee, but of a more impromptu nature, with no prescribed form. Someone started a song, its melody totally unfamiliar to me, with an odd cadence, an odder pattern, a still odder tongue. Suddenly, I heard a sound behind me. Someone had come through the gap and was crossing toward the clearing with slow, measured, almost furtive steps. A twig cracked, then another. I waited for a figure to appear within my range of vision, but no one came. Whoever it was had stopped at some point just in back of the tree, and I froze, thinking she must be investigating the trunk. But no, I knew the person standing there was only watching the proceedings in the clearing. Several women came toward the spring, carrying a large metal ewer. They submerged it in the water, and while it filled, they looked past me, one of them making a beckoning gesture, an acknowledgment to whoever it was waiting behind my hiding place. She beckoned again, gave a slight shrug, then the filled ewer was borne away, to be placed close to Justin's throne. Now, one by one, numbers of the women separated from the others and gathered around the harvest lord. His blindfold was removed, the cup given into his hands again. The women dipped napkins into the ewer and began washing his feet, a ritual of cleansing and purification. Ivied garlands and chains of flowers were produced and hung around his neck and shoulders. Then the same corn crown that had been used in the play was brought to the widow, and she placed it on his head. These women now withdrew, leaving the harvest lord to watch the dancing. The dancers were accompanied by the instruments, a primitive strain similar to the music I had heard from the cornfield on the night of the experience. From time to time the circles broke while the women refreshed themselves from the cups continually being filled from the kegs and passed among them. Unfailingly, one was always carried past my line of vision to the unknown presence standing behind my tree, and I would hear low urgings, then a muffled response, then, the cup drained, the bearer would return to the group, where their somewhat stilted ceremonial aspect was now wearing off. Their movements had become erratic, their singing often off key, their gestures more abandoned. All the time I kept careful watch for a clue in the proceedings that would tell me what it was Gracie Everdeen had done that had caused her death, or what it was about the ceremony that had caused Worthy's, or why Sophie had taken her life. The upright lord seated on the throne, muffled in his red mantle, seemed gradually to relax. His shoulders slumped slightly, and as his head moved from side to side with the rhythm of the music, I saw in the flickering light that his features had taken on a glazed, drunken look. The mead was having its hallucinogenic effect. I remembered the cask Mrs. Green had been given from Fred Minerva's wagon. They had drugged Worthy before executing him. The moon rose higher, and from time to time the widow looked up at it. I judged she was using it as a clock. The torches were hardly needed now, for the clearing was illuminated by a light etching every detail. Again the cup was passed to the corn maiden, who took it under her veil and drank, turning to one or another of the girls around her, and from the pitch of their babble I could tell that the mead was having its effect on them as well. Then, as the music built, the widow walked to the center of the clearing and lifted her hoe to the sky. The moon was directly overhead. The dancers withdrew in groups around the periphery of the clearing, while the old woman turned slowly, pointing around the ring with the tip of her hoe. I saw it swing toward me, pass, then stop. An angry look came over her face, and she marched in my direction. Yet she also was not looking at my hiding place, but behind it. I could hear her decisive whisperings to whoever was waiting behind the tree. Then she reappeared, her step lethargic, as she came to stand before the throne. With difficulty she assumed a kneeling position at Justin's feet. Where she bowed her head in prayer, the others were silent and watchful until she lifted her head again, then rose unsteadily to her feet. Her face looked flushed, and she blinked her eyes behind the spectacles. She made motions with her tongue as if she found her mouth excessively dry. She was not drunk, but narcotized. Laying a hand on Justin's shoulder, she spoke in a hoarse, uneven voice. Behold, this is our anointed. Give eye unto the chosen among us. Give tongue to his praises. He was chosen for us, and for 7 years we have loved and honored him. Trophy and tribute have been his, and the worship of all. He has been our Lord of the growing corn. He is our God, whose Godhead is the crops. The voices of the women punctuated each sentence with responses of approval, which sounded to me like the amens of a church service. As it was in the olden times, so it has been, and ever shall be. It is the way. The Spirit has been in our Lord for these 7 years, and he has brought us good harvests. It was the flesh of his body, his strength and sinew, his limbs and brain, his blood that did this for us. The corn is his, each kernel, and for it we thank him. We thank him, they chorused. This is something to have done in a life. It is something to have been made for, to have been set upon the earth, to cause the earth to bear. Oh, yes, oh, yes. Then let him be gloried. Gloried, gloried. I think that's why they italicized it. I heard the feverish response, saw the bright, glistening eyes of the women as they lavished adoring looks upon him, some in their dazed state unable to withhold sudden emotional outbursts, pushing their way toward him and prostrating themselves before him. The old woman's body had begun moving slightly. I could see her shoulders lifting and lowering as though to engender more deeply the force of the drug in her system. Her torso made small circular motions while her hand lay upon Justin's head. Hear me, for I speak with the tongue of the goddess who dwells in the earth. I remind you again of her promise. She will provide for us. She will give us the... Here she broke off, as though to remind herself what would be provided. Having recollected, she went on in a thick, harsh voice, the bountiful harvest if we, Her servants tend well to her business. If we will believe, believe. The word was repeated through the throng which forced its way nearer, the closest throwing themselves to the ground, reaching to touch the hem of Justin's cloak. Let no man gainsay us, let no outsider comprehend her. In a time when faces have been turned on the other God, let us acknowledge the mother of us all. She will sustain us. Yes, yes, as she had sustained this, her son. Cries arose, a piteous lament, and some had come behind the throne, leaning forward to touch Justin's head and caress his neck and shoulders. From his hand has come the gift, and in return we have shown him our secret. The soil has quickened and proved fertile, and the rains have been plenteous, and the sun of the world has shone on us. Has shone. Pardon for my cracking of voice. The corn grew. We have prospered. And she faltered again, making a tight movement with her lips to master herself, as if the next moment were of the greatest import. And in the gratitude of our hearts, we now offer him the pledge in token of our esteem, as is customary upon the 7th year of harvest home, that he may know of us the secret heart of that which he himself has given us. He alone of all men may know the secret which has been given to us, the secret of the Sacred Mother. For an instant I reeled back in time to tithing day, when Worthy had appeared in the church doorway and had damned the mother. The answer was at hand. The secret was to be revealed, and with it the heart of the mystery I had so long probed, the secret heart of Mother Earth. The widow's last words filled my head. He alone of all men may know. I realized my peril. If I was discovered, they would kill me. The women had formed a melting, slow-moving configuration across the clearing, and before I realized it was happening, from the midst of the throng was produced the core of the night's mysteries, which no man but the harvest lord was permitted to look upon. Covered with a woven cloth resting upon a silver salver, the mysterious and awaited object was given into the widow's hands, who now turned and held it before Justin. From her seclusion, the corn maiden arose with her court, she too to gaze upon what lay hidden under the cloth. It was not large, this I could easily see, and I felt a tremor, wondering at this rare and precious treasure, this strange, forbidden object none but the initiated might look upon. Yet, when the widow lifted the cloth and revealed it, I saw it was the commonest of things, something I had seen constantly since coming to the village of Cornwall Coombe. Was it for this these ceremonies took place? Was this the heart of the mysteries of the Great Mother, which had been handed down from generation to generation, century after century? Was this what Worthy had feared, what Grace had refused to acknowledge, and what Sophie had ended her life in dread of? What no man may know, nor woman tell, an ear of corn, a single simple ear of corn. It lay upon the salver in its husk, the salver held before Justin's eyes as he gazed on it. What, I wondered, did the fact of it reveal to him? What had it been given him? What had it been given him on the night of harvest home to read in a single ear of corn? Then I saw, as he must have, that what had been given to him was the exact and precise nature of the world he lived in, where the fact of the corn was the fact of his life. Like most simple facts, it was the truest and the most easily overlooked. On the tray, hidden in the husk, was the whole vision, the life of the corn and the life of the man, inextricably bound together in oneness, bound in the tilling and the planting and the growing, in the harvesting and in. I knew it then. I knew it, and was terribly afraid. The corn was the revelation. The revelation was in the corn, the ear in its husks, in its husk, held before the harvest lord by the hands of the widow Fortune. Its deepest significance had been obscured by the tangle of mysteries, yet in a single chilling moment all the mysteries now became clear. I felt a shiver like a strange paralysis creeping up my body. I swallowed and in the silence thought someone surely must hear, but I did not fear for myself. I feared for Justin. I knew then the terrible secret of Harvest Home. They were going to kill him. Yeah, that was obvious. Here in the grove, and that's why Sophie killed herself. Here in the grove, in this temple of the Mother Earth, the harvest lord was to be offered in ritual sacrifice. Here in the moonlight with the dancing and singing women, Justin Hook was being drugged, was then to be murdered for the corn. This was why they had revealed to him their mystery, because he would never live to tell what he had seen. Bound together in oneness, the harvest lord and the corn, and as the corn died and was reborn, so would he die and be born again, not in himself, but in the young Lord, the eternal return. I felt shock, disgust, rage, felt again the hatred I had felt at the burning, hatred for their stupid, primitive beliefs. I wanted to shout out to Justin, do not drink, run away, never hear, never listen. I looked at him. He did not seem afraid. In his drugged state, he showed no loss of dignity. He sat regal and aloof, watching as the corn ear was covered again and taken from sight, as if he comprehended what he had been shown and what he must now do. The widow was speaking again, and as our Lord has accepted honor and tribute at our hand, so we must likewise find his passing at our hand. The harvest lord made immortal, the pride of Justin Hook. The old woman continued, recalling for them the last great waste, when Lauren McCutcheon had been harvest lord. Justin nodding agreement, and the cause of this visitation had come at the hands of Gracie Everdeen. Blighted in soul and body, she whose lord had been Roger Penrose and who had defied the traditions of Harvest Home, had brought to the reign of Lauren McCutcheon waste and dearth. Perfidious Grace Everdeen, dead, all of them. Lauren McCutcheon, but not from drink. Roger Penrose, but not from a horsefall. Clement Fortune, but not from an axe blow. Murdered for the corn, the widow Fortune, widowhood, in exchange for good crops, and everyone, all the villagers, had known it, man, woman, child alike, and he, the victim, had also known, and I, the fool everyone said I was, had not known. I saw it now. Lauren McCutcheon had been the harvest lord, and had reigned for 7 years. On the 7th year, Justin had been chosen the young lord at the Agnes Fair. At Harvest Home, Lauren had been dispatched by some unknown means, and Justin had taken his place. For 7 years there had been no great waste. The crops were bountiful, and now tonight the 7 years were done. Worthy Pettinger had been chosen the young lord with Missy Penrose's bloody hands on his cheeks, signifying he would reign for the next 7 years, but Worthy had not wanted to die. He had run away, been brought back, and killed. Insult to the mother. And Justin would die in the prime of his manhood to give place to the new harvest lord, Jim Minerva, who in another 7 years would also die. The king is dead, long live the king. Now the women could not stifle their ready tears, and they began an orgy of cries, voices calling out in farewell. I strained to hear the widow. She had become somewhat incoherent, and I caught only fragments. Land has offered up its gifts, bounty, his hand given freely. Be grateful, in gratitude mourn him. The hoarse, uneven voice rose and fell in a fanatical paean of praise and sorrow. Land will sleep, so must he. Lay him to rest, recall with love the farmer Justin Hook. Generously, the moon lent its light to the scene, which little by little became more agitated. Never while the widow spoke had the cup ceased being passed among the celebrants. Never had Justin not been offered it. His eyes glittered, his tongue betrayed the dryness of his mouth, while his glazed features seemed illuminated by some dread inner light as he listened to the doleful lamentation, prefacing what was to follow. They would poison him, undoubtedly. Some baneful mixture the widow had prepared would be administered, put into his cup, and given to him to drink. But this was not yet, this was later, for now there was something to come before. I should have realized what it was to be, yet until it actually began, I did not. Had I known, nothing could have kept me where I had hidden myself. But even this part was for a time delayed while the dancing began anew. Another kind of dance, a brutal, fierce expression of emotion. Justin was brought to a standing position, and the red mantle taken from his shoulders to be folded by numerous hands, and passed from sight. Now he stood before them in godlike glory, his body covered only by a short tunic extending from neck to thigh and made of strips of corn leaves, and I could see his glistening flesh through the spaces between the strips. Again he took the proffered cup into his hands, fingers spread around the curve of metal. I watched his Adam's apple rise and fall as the liquid slid down his throat. He returned the cup, staggering slightly, pulled himself erect, and stood, spread legged, waiting. Everyone was waiting, and then I saw what was to come. There was one figure in the ceremony I had momentarily forgotten, the corn maiden. Until now she had sat by accepting the cup as it was handed her, bending forward in rapt attention as the widow spoke. Now her outer robe was taken from her, and she was brought forward, moving across the trampled grass with the slow, undulating walk, an aggressive sexuality revealed in her movement. The embroidered veil hanging to her waist, the rest of her body covered to the thighs, in the same sort of corn leaf tunic that Justin wore. While she gazed at him through her veil, the women took hoes and dug at the turf, turning the soft ground. Little by little, the green of the grass disappeared, and the sod was dug up, revealing the dark earth beneath. As they worked, they sang, their faces flushed from the drink, their gestures feverish, as though anxious to accomplish their labor. Among them walked the widow, putting her hand to their hoes, each in turn encouraging their endeavors, her white cap catching the light as she lifted her head and offered reverence to the mother, and as she spoke, each word was taken up in turn by the women. So the singing became a liturgical incantation, picked up one by one, the next repeating it, and the next, and so it spread all across the tilled clearing, the widow making gestures of transference from her mouth to theirs, offering them the words, they antiphonally returning them. We offer thee, O mother, thy husband, as thou hast given him to us. So we return him to thee into thy keeping. As thou hast provided him strength, take him in strength, in strength. For tonight he shall be gloried. They shall stand by his tomb and remember him. He shall not have been Justin Hook, the corn farmer, but the harvest lord. He shall be immortal, immortal. Take him to your breast, great holiest of mothers, this your son, and succor him, however the hell you pronounce it. Receive him, forgive him, blessed is he, blessed is he. Body of your body, body of your body, soul of your soul, soul of your soul, soul of the corn that grows, the receptacle, harborer of the seed, receive him, receive him. O mother, O mother, O mother, O mother, O mother, ma mère, mia, ma Andre, Malvar, motor, mater, meter, meter, Demeter. There it is, Demeter. Thus continued the chant, a canticle and a gradual declension of words that saw its passage from the tongue of every day through tongues that had been spoken for century upon century, and that at last became another tongue entirely. O Magther, da Migar, Idhu, Magther, a tongue spoken before any of those preceding, and the women, hand locked in circle within the grove, had the tongue, for the old woman gave it to them. But though they did not know the meaning of the words, they comprehended their import, for this was part of the mystery they shared in, And as they chanted, the flutes fell silent, and only the drums and tambourines continued, their repeated monotony bringing the celebrants closer and closer to the magic that lay behind this night of nights. Magther, Da Magther, a steady tempo measuring out the cadence and rhythm, and the tongue became tongueless, became sounds only, iterated again and again as the old woman turned the circle, her fisted hand giving the meter to the drums and tambourines, giving the women the chant and the words she knew, the syllables, the sounds of the tongue that was no tongue at all. Ah, idhu, ya, hog, agrel, nah, neither English nor German, nor Latin, nor Celtic, nor Sumerian, nor any other language, for it was the tongue men had spoken at the dawn of time when they first learned to communicate. And at length, as the old woman circled, giving to them the sounds, some of the women's heads began to sway, and their bodies followed where their heads led them, and their joined hands parted while their throats, giving utterance to the sounds, they fell to the ground and tore up the grass and dug at the earth like animals, swine rooting, groveling, rolling upon one another, writhing in hysteria with heaving breast and flailing limb, and the old woman stood above them, driving them, her fist metronomic against the moon, rising, lowering, giving them the tempo and the words. Nothing could stay them now, nothing still them. Wildly they flung themselves where they might, heedless of injury, unaware of reality, swept into hypnotic oblivion, their stomachs expanding, contracting, drinking air that they should rise and chant again, and again fall in frenzy. And there were some who fell at the feet of the watching harvest lord, who had laid his cup aside and sat unmoving and upright, observing the secret rites as they swooned before him, permitting them to extend their quivering hands to touch him, piteous, tender hands, despairing hands, surely they must touch their last. Beloved Lord, O lively, warm male flesh, O magnificent Lord, we thank thee. The mother thanks thee. O mother Magther, Idhu, ah, Idhu. Louder grew the cry, louder the chant, more serpentine their writhings as they yearned toward him, rushing from him to tear their hair, heads flung back, open mouthed to shout unintelligible obscenities at the heaven that was to deprive them of their beloved. Now it would be his death, the end of Justin Hook, but no, still it was not yet. There was more for the living Justin, one thing more for him to do. They swooped upon him and brought him from where he stood beside the corn maiden to a spot near the center of the clearing where the earth had been hoed, and from my hiding place I could see the blank glitter of his eyes, the half-lidded look of pleasure as they strewed themselves about his feet, rubbing their cheeks along his legs, upward to his thighs, their eager hands reaching under his tunic to fondle and caress him. His head dropped back, and a deep-throated moan of pleasure issued from his mouth as he became aroused, and through the parted strips of corn leaves appeared the living malehood of the harvest lord. That's pretty fucking lame. Ya idhu! They screamed, rushing to touch it, feel the erect object of their adoration. The great rooster that had occasioned the ribald comments at their kitchen doors. Ya idhu! Am lot! Cries of torment, their frenzy now insupportable. The sight and touch of the Priapian object induced a wild pantomime of devotion and obscene reverence to the maleness of the harvest lord. They were working at his back, binding his hands behind him, braided thongs, rendering them useless. Then the corn maiden was brought to him, and I realized what must follow. Together in front of the others, they were to make the corn. The veiled figure stood before him, leaf strips from the neck to thigh, white legs gleaming, and arms as she brought them up in a worshipful gesture, violently trembling. Hands reached to draw away the veil, and as it fluttered, then slid away entirely. I stared, only half hearing the twig crack behind the tree as the waiting presence took a step forward. I paid scant attention to my danger, as in that single terrible moment I realized the mistake I had made, and to what extent I had underrated the widow Fortune's powers of persuasion. If Tamar Penrose had been a candidate, and Sally and Margie, they had all lost. The widow had wanted new blood for the corn maiden. She had got it. It was Beth. Like one entranced, she stood as if she had stepped from a sleeping dream into a waking one. Hands reached to support her as she faced Justin, the harvest lord and the corn maiden, the man and the woman, my friend and my wife. She had eyes for nothing but him. In a blinding flash, I thought back to the night of the experience. Beth, in the chair, her hand raised. She had not been pulling down the shade. She had seen him, was acknowledging him. Already the widow had begun her corruption. Her body swayed as if drawn to him by a magnet. She tried to lift her arms. They dropped to her side. She went slack, crumpled under the power of the keg liquor. Hands bore her down where her fingers dug at the tilled earth. Dirtied, they became claws and began rending the thin fabric of the leaves that covered her, exposing her breasts and belly. Then, looking up at the figure towering over her, she moaned, and her head reached upward. She wanted him. She wanted to take him inside her, to couple with him. I cried out and began tearing at the covering of vines across the tree hollow, hearing the step at my side, twigs cracking, then being confronted in my struggle by the red-lipped face of Tamar Penrose, her red-nailed fingers ripping at the screen of leaves to expose me, calling loudly, "He has seen!" Heads turning while I sought to free myself, enraged that the vines had sequestered me now because my fetters and held me fast now became my fetters, not my feathers, and held me fast, while, with angry cries, they came at me, a wave of vengeful harpies. I cursed them, trying to free my hands and feet, feeling the sharpness of their nails as they tore at the vines, and "Defiler!" they shouted, astonished and furious. "He has defiled us!" While I yanked and pulled, saw Tamar's glittering eyes in my mind, saw Missy's deader ones. Heard her say, "You will be sorrier." The blank yet knowing look. "Kill him!" they cried. Justin and Beth turned with uncomprehending stares, not knowing what had happened. "Kill him!" The women cried again. "No," someone commanded, the widow's voice, but not the widow at all, some bedeviled creature unearthly in her fury, her cap fallen off, hair wildly hanging about her shoulders, her black dress smutted, the widow in the madness of her own dream into which I rashly had intruded. "No, he shall not be killed yet. He has come to see, he has come to witness. Let him see, let him witness, let him see the harvest Lord at work. Let him see the furrow plowed. Let him see the making of the corn." While many hands imprisoned me in the hollow of the tree, she turned back, and at her signal, the drugged Justin was brought again to stand spread legged over the supine body of Beth, his arms pinned behind while they spread her legs apart, and he stepped between them and knelt, and eagerly they guided him into the darkness between her legs. I went mad. Waves of nausea and horror swept me, a stoppage in my ears as if all sound were suddenly cut off, a switch thrown, a plug pulled, leaving only dull interior explosions, painful sparks behind my straining eyeballs, the blood surging through the taut veins in my neck, my teeth clamping onto my lower lip to stop the soundless words I screamed, trying to turn away, to shut my eyes, feeling the sting of Tamar's nails as they bit into my arm until I was made to watch again. See him plow the furrow. Watch. I watched. She was not his lover, nor he hers, but both were instruments of the women. His arms bound, hers held outstretched on the earth as he probed her, and my cries broke from my lips again, mingling with the ecstatic chant that moment by moment mounted in tempo and pitch. "Idhu, Idhu!" thrusting their shoulders as he thrust, grunting as she grunted. "Idhu!" Or is that L? Is that an L? It is. Lidu. Sorry, I thought it was Idhu. Some moving behind him, their fingers tracing the curve of his back as it arched and bent again, rose and sank, their passion spurring his passion. She beneath him, crying out in lust and pain. In the madness and the moonlight, his face contorted in spasm as he pushed his way farther. And then, in the moment of complete knowledge, they worked each other, met shudderingly, and capitulated. The corn was made. I screamed out, but all eyes were on the locked pair. As they lay on the ground, he covering her, the handle of a hoe was thrust through his bent arms and across his back, and he was torn from her. They brought him to his knees with his spine arched like a bow. A tremendous roaring sounded in his throat. Some of them had lifted her away, and she lay panting as she was covered over with the mantle, and the veil was drawn over her head. His bull-like roars continued. He knelt, dripping, onto the ground. I shouted again, trying still to pull away from the hands holding me. What followed only took seconds. There was a quick flash of movement as Tamar sprang forward. A woman whose fingers were tangled in Justin's hair forced his head back and moved aside when, with a wild look, Tamar thrust herself at him. A silver crescent gleamed in her hand. She raised the sharpened sickle, and holding the tip with the other hand, in one swift movement she slashed it across the exposed throat. His roar became a wild bellow, then turned to a gurgle. A torrent of red appeared, a brightly flowing curtain melting down the neck and onto the chest. They bent him back farther and came with cup and bowl to catch their precious liquid, stumbling as they bore it to all quarters of the clearing, spilling his blood among the upturned clods. It was an ugly death. They struggled to hold him through the series of convulsive heaves that racked his body, the giant muscles bulging, arms flailing, a slow agony as the red life drained from him and was poured into the ground. Then the great shoulders heaved, slanted sideways, and he buckled like a gored bull and toppled over, the blood still gushing from the crescent wound. They had dragged me from the hollow and pushed me forward, the better to see this horror, the death of the harvest lord. I watched as I had watched the eye in dreams, unable to do anything else. It was not happening. It could not be happening. Yet I knew it was. I shut my eyes, trying not to look. Yet I looked. The massive chest rose in a thickly glutted cough. There was a final eruption of blood through the mouth. The lids flickered. The eyes rolled upward. Then the great heart ceased pumping, and he lay still. They changed his position, strengthening him out on the earth, laying him on his side, resting his head along one bent arm. Then the final horror. Tamar flung herself down on the ground beside him, pulling herself to him, entwining her arms about him in bloody embrace, her red lips kissing his redder ones. The hands relaxed their hold on me as the women watched the hideous sight. I pulled free. The moon had gone behind a cloud, and the clearing had become dark. Beyond the clearing were the trees. Beyond the trees lay safety. I began running. But what tree was there to shelter this fugitive, to harbor the defiler of the temple, the heretic? Like nemesis, they appeared from all sides of the clearing, blocking my every way. I wheeled, my foot caught on a bared root, and I went down, feeling the taste of earth upon my tongue. It was not bitter. As I waited for them to attack, it seemed the ground was strangely warm, and I, strangely comforted. In those few brief moments, I pressed my cheek against the tilled soil, the very bosom of Mother Earth, feeling it assuage the burning flesh, felt the firm yet yielding body of it under my flattened palms. It was as though beneath my beating heart I could sense the heart of the land itself, the heart that lay within, the heart of Mother Earth. Through all my being, I could feel her massiveness, her power, and her strength. She did not spurn me. She seemed to draw me to her, to embrace me, though she who had given me life would give no more. She would receive me back to her, and as I had never prayed to God for my soul's repose, now I prayed to her, nor for succor or protection, but for absolution. She was clement. She would forgive. Then, as I lay there on the streaming earth, out of the shambles of out of the shambles of the night, the women fell upon me. I guess I should finish this off. 6 pages. I could do it, bruvs. If you don't mind my coughing and gasping, let me blow my nose. Now that's dedication to the reading. What time is it? 12:43. I got time. 30. It's too lovely a day, raising the window to keep it outside the house. Feel that glorious spring breeze. Mother, your dress. Like it? It's beautiful. I thought perhaps, no, it's just perfect. I'm glad. She went from the Bacant room to the kitchen, leaving behind the scent of the lilac she had arranged on the sideboard. What about dessert? In the refrigerator, darling. The refrigerator door opened. Chocolate mousse. How many? 6. 2 for Maggie and Robert, 2 for you and Jim. 1 for me, 1 for the widow. Open the window over the sink, Kate. Would you? The window slid in its frame, and as though in response, beyond the hedge, Robert's sun porch window was raised. Morning, Robert. It's Maggie. Beth. Marvelous day for a picnic. How's it coming? In a jiffy. I think you're crazy. Always doing the whole thing yourself. I want to. Got the martinis? Iced and ready. Here's Robert. Morning, Beth. Spring at last, hey? Oh, yes. I thought it would never come. It was true. After the long winter, the balmy, caressing air already had a hint of summer in it. And where it slipped under the window of the Bacant room, it mixed with and circulated the perfume of the lilacs. From window to window, they discussed the yellow bird in the locust tree. I told you, Robert said, it comes back every year. The invisible voice began. Though certainly I don't know why you should, said Dora, and I am sure no one. What's that say, Jip? Jip? You naughty boy, come. I don't know how I did it. I did it in a moment. I intercepted Jip. I had Dora in my arms. I was full of eloquence. I never stepped for a word. I told her how I loved her. I told her I should die without her. I told her that I idolized and worshipped her. Jip barked madly all the time. When Dora hung her head and cried and trembled, we're having chocolate mousse, Kate called over to Robert's window. Robert replied briefly over the sound of the invisible voice. Well, well, Dora and I were sitting on the sofa by and by, quiet enough, and Jip was lying in her lap, winking peacefully at me. It was off my mind. I was in a state of perfect rapture. Dora and I were engaged. Presently, down the drive, came the clop of a horse's hoofs, and the creak of wooden wheels sounded under the Bacant room window. Beth's light step carried her to the sink. Good morning. Springish, ain't it? Where's Kate now? Kate, come out and see what I have for you. Scrambling noises in the kitchen, the back door opening, feet clattering down the steps. Mother, come see what the widow's brought. Beth hurried out to join the others. Oh, just look at them, she crooned. For me? Kate asked. If your mother says, came the reply amid myriad cheepings. If you're going to have eggs, you gotta raise hens. These here now are real Easter chicks. A car honked out on the street, a door slammed. Here's Jim Minerva. Congratulations, Harvest Lord. Morning, everybody. Morning, Kate. You're looking spruce for spring festival. How'll it feel to be crowned? Here, take these creatures out to the hen house and put 'em in the brooder. Kate's and Jim's voices trailed away as they went off to the studio. Beth said, What are you giving Jimmy today? I sewed him a new shirt. I picked out cufflinks, just one thing. That you, widow? Came a voice from the house beyond the hedge. Morning, Robert. Fine day for maypoling. The Eternal Return, Chapter 24. My aunt astonishes me. I wrote to Agnes as soon as Dora and I were engaged. I wrote her a long letter in which I tried to make her comprehend how blessed I was. And what a darling Dora was, I entreated Agnes. Dickens, said Robert. Aya, Dickens. Presently, Kate and Jimmy came back up the drive, laughing and talking in low, significant tones. You're lucky you've got that skylight, Jim said, but if you expect those hens to lay at night, we're going to have to put in electric lights. Listen to Jim, Kate, the widow said. He's one of the best hen raisers in the village. Eggs galore, eh, Jim? Eggs galore, widow. His voice, though bright and cheery, seemed to have taken on an air of depth and solidity. Mother, Jimmy says it's all right with him if I drive his car. If it's all right with you, Mrs. Constantine. Kate, darling, you're bound to have your driver's license, aren't you? Determined girl. It's the Greek in her, the widow observed. Half Greek, don't forget. Kate laughed. They made their goodbyes, and when the car had driven away, the widow said, a handsome pair, aren't they? Makes me think of when Clem would take me to Spring Festival during our curtain during our courtin' days. A pause then. Wouldn't it be wonderful if I know what you're thinking. Beth drew a tremulous sigh. She'd make a lovely corn maiden, no doubt of it. I never thought I'd see the day when my daughter would be going into the poultry business. The way those two have worked cleaning out that studio, good for each other, the widow replied succinctly. Like I say, a handsome pair if ever there was. Pretty dress you're wearing. If anyone ever told me I'd be wearing maternity clothes again. Are you taking your elixir? Yes, and I can feel him kicking stronger every day. Missy thanks a J. J? Oh, thanks, said J. J? John? She says it's got to be 6 letters. I thought Joshua. Capital. The Battle of Jericho and all. Pause then. Sophie's pear trees, all abloom. I saw. Just like the portrait. There's the chooch. Pity it never got finished. Good painter he was, yes. When the widow's buggy had gone, Beth came back in the kitchen and busied herself with the remaining details of the lunch. The wicker of the Hammacher Schlemmer hamper creaked as she packed it. The refrigerator door opened and closed several times, and her brisk footsteps took her from one area in the room to another while she went about her work. In another moment, the sink tap was turned on. My dear Copperfield, cried Traddles, punctually appearing at my door in spite of all these obstacles. How do you do? My dear Traddles, said I am delighted to see you at last, and very sorry I've not been at home before, but I have been so much engaged. The gush of water from the tap stopped. Then there was a quick zip as Beth tore a paper towel from the roll. She dried her hands, humming lightly, then opened the door under the sink and raised the lid of the trash container. Dear me, said Traddles, considering about it. Do I strike you in that way, Copperfield? Really, I don't know that I had. She lifted the hamper and set it on the chair by the kitchen door. I'm forgetting my quilting, she told herself in a surprised tone. She came walking briskly from the kitchen, softening her step as she came into the bacchante room. Now you mention it, Copperfield, I shouldn't wonder at all. I assure you she is always forgetting herself and taking care of the other 9. Is she the eldest? I inquired. Oh, dear, no, said Traddles. The eldest is a beauty. The passage ceased abruptly. I'm going, dear. She lifted the pickup arm and set it aside and switched off the talking book machine as she went on speaking. It's such beautiful weather. Nothing like a New England spring. Kate's gone on ahead with Jimmy Minerva. I wish you'd change your mind and come with us. Ned? I could hear her leaning to take up her work basket from the end of the hunter green sofa. The sun would do you good, being cooped up in here all winter. No? Well, you know best what you want to do. I won't urge. I knew what was coming next. Oh, Ned, she said in the nurse's tone she had made her own. You didn't eat your lunch again. Won't you try a little? It's calf's liver, your favorite. I could hear her lifting the fork, the tines striking the plate as she speared a piece of the carefully cut liver. I raised my hand to forestall her. Though I find it difficult learning to feed myself, I do not care to have her do it for me. All right, darling, she said in her bright, indulgent way. There's crackers in the cupboard and cheese in the refrigerator if you get hungry. And tonight we'll have dinner at the Yankee Clipper if you'd like that. Ned? I made no reply, for I could not. It was as Robert had suggested. Some tragedies were unspeakable. I would never speak again. I heard her murmur, and I knew she was making an inventory of the things on my table. I recognized the familiar sound of the rubber stoppered bottle as she moved it closer. Don't forget to put in your drops, she said. They're right here, taking my hand to feel where the bottle was, and the cotton's just beside them. I have my sewing and Jimmy's present and the picnic, she said, and I knew she was standing in the middle of the room, checking for anything she might have forgotten to do for me. She bent to kiss me, her cheek grazing the frames of my dark glasses, which she took pains to strengthen again. Bye, darling, she said, pressing my clenched hand, then starting out. Her footsteps halted briefly, and I heard the rustle of the leaves. I knew she was making a last minute rearrangement of the flowers she had brought in, lilacs for heart's desire. Then she laughed softly, the light, rueful laugh that was a copy of Maggie Dodd's. I'm forgetting your talking book, she said, switching on the phonograph and resetting the needle on the record. Very pretty, said I. When she had gone, I sat in my club chair, finding it extraordinary that she could unfailingly locate the precise place where the narrative had been interrupted. But then she had always been extraordinary. Somewhere in the distance a child called, another answered, a dog barked, and still the warm May breeze slipped over the sill, rustling the chintz curtains and softly stirring the leaves of the lilacs on the sideboard. Their heavy odor hung in the room. For no apparent reason, I was thinking of Joshua. It would be a boy, as Missy had predicted. I was sure it would. Have Justin Hook's blond hair and blue eyes. Outside in the bitter spring, the yellow bird sang as it built its new nest. I folded my hands in my lap. The clock ticked. The invisible voice continued. Not a bad book. Not a great one, but not a bad one. I was thinking along the way during the part where he was hiding in the tree and they were having their ceremony that if he had just brought a gun, I mean, that would have solved a lot of problems. But what do I know? I mean, that's how I would have ended the novel with pew, pew, pew. Lots of pew, pews. And lots of expired witches. But that's just me. Goodbye, Robs.